Hey, look, Arya and Zoro are back. They're here to join us for the checkpoint discussion problems. Oh, yeah, you're excited for checkpoint? That's right, that's right. All right, all right. Where'd they go? Well, I guess they lost interest pretty quick. We're going to get right down to business, though. I'm going to keep your interest. Just like this suit, this money suit, we're going to get right down to business. We're talking about Checkpoint, the commercial tax research service. Now, I have a video where I went over the introduction to Checkpoint, and I actually went through the software with you. This video, we're going to be focusing on some discussion problems to help you hone in on those skills, hone in on your understanding of certain topics, understand the differences in what the areas of Checkpoint, as well as some of the unique features of Checkpoint compared to other commercial tax research databases. Okay, let's go ahead. Let's jump right into it. We have 8 discussion problems that focus on Checkpoint. Let's go ahead and start with question 1. What is the function of a commercial tax service? The function of a commercial tax service is to facilitate efficient, effective, and comprehensive searches by organizing primary and secondary sources. So again, facilitate efficient, effective, and comprehensive. Those are the key words. Efficient, effective, and comprehensive searches by organizing both primary and secondary sources. So it's all about those primary and secondary sources making efficient, effective, and comprehensive in terms of a tax researcher being able to search. So organizing both primary and secondary sources. Primary and secondary sources. They also provide editorial content not available elsewhere. So the idea of, when you think of commercial services, is it's a comparison of whether a tax professional should use a commercial tax service, which of course costs money, or use a free tax service like going on to the IRS website and pulling up revenue rulings, for example. The idea is that, yes, the drawback of a commercial tax service, it costs money versus free is free, but it does make it efficient, effective, and comprehensive to do tax research by organizing both primary and secondary sources. And again, a big benefit of the commercial tax services, the editorial materials that are available. The experts they hire to go through materials and put their analysis on an area. Let's go to question 2. Why would a practitioner need a tax service when most primary tax sources are available for free on the internet? So we just kind of went into this on question 1, but let's go in more depth. So while practitioners can retrieve most primary tax sources at no cost, as I mentioned, a lot of stuff is available on the IRS website, this free access does not translate into more effective research. This is because there's voluminous amounts of information, and this takes time to sort, read, and comprehend, which can lead to information overload and inefficiency. So those 3 elements, the efficiency, effective, and comprehensive nature of a commercial tax service, they offer those benefits over just free services. All this information must be managed. Otherwise, using the internet for tax research is not effective. Consequently, internet access to primary sources cannot substitute for a subscription to comprehensive tax services. So it's all about these efficiencies, effectiveness, and comprehensiveness. Now, other elements to note, and I have in the introduction to this Checkpoint topic, I talk about this, some things to stress: the immediate update when it comes to tax law, near immediate, I should say, the near immediate update of tax law. So when there's a change in the tax law, which happens frequently, you better believe that it's going to take some time for the free sources online to be updated. However, if it's a commercial tax service, they update almost immediately. These commercial tax services, they offer certain persuasive authorities that cannot be accessed through free services online. And it's not just secondary sources. So certain persuasive materials. And again, it's not just secondary sources such as editorial materials. It's also certain tax opinions, such as the tax court summary opinions, which you're not able to access all of those tax court summary opinions online through even the IRS, through the tax court website. You can't access all of those if you look back in time. Or certain IRS pronouncements, you might be able to access some, but not others, with respect to certain IRS pronouncements that we talk about in the administrative topics, the administrative tax authorities. In addition, again, we have the editorial services, so there might be certain experts that can help tremendously with tax research. For example, if you're dealing with intellectual property, it might be an area of law you're not familiar with respect to tax consequences. You can go into one of these tax research databases, these commercial services, and they've basically done all the research for you. Of course, again, it costs a fee, but it helps. The organization of these tax services is also very helpful because, as you've seen in the introduction video, when you actually go through it, it's connected. There's links between authorities, and you've got these related information buttons that link you to other authorities. So links between other authorities that might be relevant that you wouldn't be able to connect through just going online for free. So those are the main benefits. Let's go on to question 3. List the 6 major editorial services provided by Checkpoint and discuss the differences between them. So I like to refer to these as the big 6. I talked about them in the introduction to this topic, that respective video. And I'm just going to go through 6, but there's a lot of different editorial services provided by Checkpoint. We're just going through the big 6. So the first 2 we're going to talk about are the flagship. So number 1, the one that is most well known that Checkpoint does is the FTC, which is known as the Federal Tax Coordinator. And this is the most comprehensive of all of the different services, all the different editorial services provided by Checkpoint. So FTC, and this is one of the flagship, one of the premier editorial services that Checkpoint provides. So I'm going to provide kind of an overview. I will just say that this one is a comprehensive editorial service. Comprehensive editorial service. And as we saw in the video, it's arranged by topic. It's not annotated, it's arranged by topic. Okay, the second one I want to mention is the other flagship, and this one's a similar name. It's the Federal Tax Handbook. It's the Federal Tax Handbook, also known as the FTH. So these are only available in Checkpoint. They are the Checkpoint specific editorial materials. And the Federal Tax Handbook is similar to the Federal Tax Coordinator, except it's more an accurate and easy reference for day-to-day tax questions on most current tax years. So it's more like a day-to-day guide, not as comprehensive. So it's more of a day-to-day guide in terms of for tax issues. More day-to-day guide for tax issues. One thing you're going to notice with the Federal Tax Coordinator is that it's very comprehensive, it's very big, very long. This is more summarized for just overall issues that you're more likely to see regularly. The Federal Tax Coordinator, it covers even more. So the third thing is the citator. Now, each commercial tax service has their own citator, but Checkpoint calls their citator the citator. And the citator, the purpose of the citator is that it checks the status of certain tax authorities to make sure that they are still good law. For certain tax authorities, to make sure they are still good law. And we talked about this in much more depth in the intro video, but the citator notes specific relationships between certain authorities like cases, revenue rulings, regulations. And for example, for cases, it talks about if a case has been overruled by another case or distinguished or cited in or citing. It also tracks an issue individually, so you can actually look at respective issues, allowing the practitioner to follow key issues of a case or a rev ruling or a regulation. The citator is completely integrated within Checkpoint. Like we talked about in question 2, everything's integrated to allow you to cite check all cases quickly, all cases and revenue rulings, all the authorities that apply, and to see all activity for a given case in one place. So the next one, so citator is not a flagship, just the first 2 are the flagships. So the next one is the PPC, Tax Compliance and Planning Guides. The PPC, Tax Compliance and Planning, the guides or guidebooks. And these, I'm not going to put an explanation. I'm just going to tell you what it is. PPC, Practitioners Publishing Company. These are desk books and guides on certain topics involving preparation of tax returns and also planning guidance. Okay, the next one, number 5, is the USTR, which is the United States Tax Reporter. This is a comprehensive and up-to-date source of federal tax law, regulations, committee reports, cases, rulings, explanations, and federal forms. Now, this is in an annotation or annotative format. It's in an annotative format. So that means it's broken down by code section, not topic like we have the Federal Tax Coordinator. It's annotative. So it's annotations organized by both code section and a legal issue site, the American Federal Tax Reports, and other widely known case reporters. But it's annotative. And finally, number 6, WG&L treatises. So Warren Gorham Lamont is what that means. WG&L treatises. These are the most in detail. They basically, a treatise is the most in detail type of secondary authority you can have. It basically takes an extreme deep dive into a topic and exhausts it. And it's very much topical, where it goes over certain topics. It's organized by topics, and it just provides just everything. It's an exhaustive explanation or exhaustive overload of information in an area. So if you want to become an expert in an area, a treatise is usually the best place to look. Okay, let's go on to question 4. So which tool in Checkpoint might help a researcher confirm the confirm the current status of a case ruling? Okay, so we just talked about that. That would be, we just talked about number 3, it's the citator. So the citator is definitely what we look at. The tax law changes daily due to new legislation, issuance regulations, administrative pronouncements, and court cases. Since the tax law is constantly evolving, researchers must determine if subsequent events have affected the legal standing upon which the tax solution relies. Checkpoint has a citator to help with this. So the citator is meant to help keep track of whether a law is still good. Keep track of good law, whether it's still good law, whether it's cases can be overruled, revenue rulings can be superseded, regulations and whatnot, the proposed regulation can no longer be valid. There's all these issues in the law, and that's what the citator helps with. So the citator is a tool that helps the researcher in Checkpoint, and in different other databases called different things. Like in Lexis, it's called the Shepard's or Shepardizing system. It's the Shepard's, and Westlaw, it's called the KeyCite system. So, and their citator through KeyCite. So tools, it's a tool through which a researcher can learn the history of a legal source or primary authority and evaluate the strength of the holdings. It follows the thread through subsequent cases and summarizes where threads lead and what they may mean. Now, why is it used? Well, it's pretty clear. The citator is used mainly to keep track of good law, but as we saw in the intro video, it can also help guide to other primary sources that might be relevant. So it's a way to do research, so guide to other sources that may be relevant. You might be able to go to a case like we saw with Glenshaw Glass or the Ferris case, and you can go backwards and you can look at that and you can see, okay, well, I have some facts. Yeah, the Ferris case has some similarities, but a lot of differences. I can see what other cases reference in the future, reference Ferris, and maybe there'll be more even similarities there. So it could even guide to other sources that may be relevant to the tax professional. Question 5. Distinguish between the following items: cited case, citing case, citation, and cites. So with the citator, there's a lot of terminology, and we're going to go through all these things. So the first thing is the cited case. So the cited case is the case at issue. And in the intro video that I went over, intro to Checkpoint, I gave an example looking at the citator. We looked at the case. The case at issue is a cited case. So it's the case that is at issue, meaning it's the one where you're using the citator, The citing cases, the citing case or cases, those are the subsequent cases that reference the cited case. So those are the future cases that reference the cited case, The citation is the format that all these cases take place, mainly the cited case, that's the one we're following, but also the citing cases, that's the citation. And then cites basically just refer to when one case refers to another case when a case in the future refers to a previous case, it is citing, or it cites a previous case. So when the citing case cites the cited case, that is the verb I use, right? You have a case in the future that's referring to a previous case. Within that opinion, that case it's citing, or it cites the previous case. That's what we're talking about. There's other language as well that we saw in our video, like cited favorably, cited without comment, distinguish. We saw all on all fours. We saw a bunch of different language. We saw using the reasoning but not the holding. We saw all these things. The idea is that if it's on all fours, it's the subsequent case that is referring to the previous case. It's citing the previous case. That if it says it's on all fours, that means that the subsequent case is using the previous case in pretty much all regards of how the previous case was used to analyze, and the holding, the facts, everything. That's the strongest support that you can have with respect to determining whether you're looking at a case, whether it's being used in the future. Next, strongest would be cited favorably. Cited favorably means that the holding and the facts and the reasoning are all used. Maybe there's some elements out that aren't, and that's why it's not on all fours. Then we have cited without comment. The reasoning. Reasoning would come next. Similar reasoning or using reasoning. That means that maybe the holding wasn't the same, but the reasoning of the case was important, not the facts. So just using the reasoning. Then there's cited without comment. That one is going to be not as strong. It's going to be, okay, well, it was referenced, but it wasn't used for facts or holding or whatnot, or even the reasoning. It was just cited because for a general proposition. And then finally, the distinguished is going to be the last one. It's going to be the one that, okay, if you have a case in the future distinguishes, it's explaining why the subsequent case is not the same as the previous case. So go through my intro video and I go through all that with an example, and it helps you. Remember the four phrases or words here at issue. Cited case is the case that you're at issue, that you're trying to determine in the citator whether what's happening in the future. The citing case is the subsequent case that is citing, or it cites the previous case. The citation is the format that the case goes in, and in judicial sources of tax law, I spent a long time talking about what format it needs to be in. And then finally, cites the subsequent case, it cites a previous case. Okay, let's go on to question 6. Describe the 4 common search methods used in Checkpoint. So the 4 common search methods, we have keyword search. So keyword, we've got index search, we have content search, and we have the citation search. I would say that they are in that order by popularity. By far, keyword search is going to be the most common because practitioners, they're used to searching the internet, and it's very similar to that structure in terms of how you go on a search engine and search the internet. So the keyword search, there's really 4 steps. Step 1 is to determine the keyword. Step 2 is to determine the database. Step 3 is to determine the type of search, which there's intuitive and there's proximity and connectors, or terms and connectors, I should say, which is like a Boolean logic approach. And then the 4th one is to refine the search, because a lot of times you're going to have too much or too little. So the keyword, that's usually the hardest part, is getting proper keywords. And tax research these days, as I showed you in the intro video to Checkpoint, it's become a lot easier because there's this kind of artificial intelligence type software that kind of helps guide you in terms of, like, you start putting in a phrase like swimming pool, and it brings up swimming pool medical expense, swimming pool medical deduction, swimming pool depreciation, swimming pool depreciation life. It brings up all these phrases that might be relevant in terms of tax law. Database, you got primary and secondary sources. So in the intro video, I went through that. Type of search, again, I just talked about intuitive versus terms and connectors. Intuitive is natural language, just jargon and thesaurus type ideas where maybe you put down a phrase, maybe there's a thesaurus or a synonym that comes up that's similar to it. It's not the exact wording. And in terms of connectors, it's the exact wording, and it uses the Boolean logic, which is kind of an algebraic approach to logic where it uses the and or type idea that you have in most search engines today. And then refining, if you have too many searches or too little, you can refine these things. Change the keywords, change the database. A lot of times the database is the key to change that, or keyword. And then the type of search, I would say keyword and database are more common. The index search, basically an index search, you go into topics. You go into topics usually in secondary sources, and you go through those to get kind of like an encyclopedic approach by alphabetic, and you basically get to the area that you want. Again, I showed that in the intro video, intro to this topic checkpoint. I showed an example where we got to swimming pool and we got to medical expense. The next one is the content, which is short for table of content. So it pretty much goes through the Internal Revenue Code or goes through a secondary source by table of content. That's really what it is. And then finally, a citation search. Citation search is really relevant if you know an area or the person above you or that's asking you to do the research, they give you a case that might be relevant. And the idea there is you might be able to put that citation in and then use the tools, the related information tools, and I show an example of that in the intro video. So the related information tools like the citator, like annotations, like the federal tax coordinator you can click on, because remember, in Checkpoint, everything is interconnected, it's linked. So you can kind of back into some of these things. And it's really interesting and really neat because in my intro video, which if you didn't watch, make sure you watch that, I actually showed you, we looked up something and we found this goldmine secondary source, a federal tax coordinator, that pretty much summarizes all the issues that we need to know for our respective issue, our respective fact pattern. And I found that using the keyword search, the index search, the content search, and the citation search. Now, granted, some of those were easier than others, like especially content search is probably the most difficult, or the citation search. If you didn't have that citation, it'd be challenging to back that out, but you're able to get to the same place in different ways. That's the idea. Okay, let's go on to question 7. Question 7 is compare and contrast the general organization of an annotated tax database with that of a topical tax database. So annotated is basically broken down by code section. So it's broken by code section. It's broken down by code section. That's the key. It's broken down by code section when it comes to tax services. So organized by Internal Revenue Code section. These are called compilations as they compile an editor's explanation and evaluation, and they provide annotations, like we saw some of those in the intro video, of related court cases and administrative rulings. Topical tax database is basically the same idea as an index approach. It's several topics. It's like an encyclopedia. If you remember back in the old days, maybe some of you don't remember these, but there was these encyclopedias you could buy. You could buy each letter. If you don't know about this, go look this up online. You buy a letter, and that letter of the alphabet, you'd have all these phrases in there. So, and you could learn a topic from an encyclopedia. So and before we had the internet, that's how a lot of people, they learn topics, was from encyclopedias. So the encyclopedia approach, you basically have the same thing. You go through alphabetically. You've got these different topics grouped in there, and it ends up being a good approach, especially if you're new to an area of tax law. Okay, question 8. Last question. Woo, almost done. Explain the difference between a terms and connector search and intuitive search. Okay, we talked about this. We talked about this when we talked about the keyword search, the type of search. So a terms and connector search is a Boolean logic approach, which is an algebraic approach where it uses the terms and, or. If you put those in there, it makes differences. It uses quotation marks. It uses a star or asterisk. It uses a exclamation point to do certain things. And if you actually go in Checkpoint, I didn't really show this because that wasn't really a focus. If we had a more advanced one, I'd show you. But you actually can see the terms and connectors, and it's very similar across the tax research databases, the terms and connectors. And when you go into search engine online, it's very similar as well. Okay, so it uses these proximity, and you can also search within like a paragraph, like 2 words. You can search within a certain number of words as well. paragraph, a certain number of words. You can do all these different crazy things. An intuitive search is a natural language search. It's a natural language search where, again, it focuses on regular written language phrases to generate search results, and it even involves some synonyms at times, where it uses kind of like an AI approach to kind of understand, okay, synonyms. If you put in a phrase, then it might come up with a not the exact language, but something very similar. So it takes variants of how you put something in. So if you put the word deducted, it might find deduction. It might find deduct. That's the idea. So it's just a natural language approach. All right. So that really concludes everything. Make sure you go back over this. Go back over the intro video. Hope you've enjoyed that. Make sure you watch more of these videos.